Back in 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 launched to major critical polarization. Much of it was due to the game's massive leak, which exposed sensitive information regarding the game's narrative, which many could argue poisoned the game's reception after launch. Now, about 3 years later, Naughty Dog has released a remastered version of Ellie's latest adventure, adding a new roguelike mode called No Return, cut levels, and improving the game's performance for PS5 owners. I 100%ed the entire thing, so let's discuss whether the game is worth the $50 asking price or the $10 upgrade if you have the PS4 version. Now, I'm not going to discuss the game as a whole, I'm only going to discuss the new content. I've already done a full deep dive into what I think about the game, and at its core, the game is the same thing. Now, let's talk about the new content, first discussing the lost levels. Now, these are not part of the game's main campaign, but instead cut levels that were not finalized. Instead, they are playable builds that are missing features such as textures, audio, and other aspects that require months more work. Before starting each level, Neil Druckmann provides a summary along with concept art highlighting where the level was supposed to be. Much of the reason behind these cuts was pacing issues, and considering how long the game already is, probably was for the best. In addition, they're all Ellie focused levels, which is a bit disappointing. The Last of Us 2 is already a meaty experience with about 15 to 20 hours to complete the game, and likely these would have added a lot more playtime if implemented to their fullest. In addition, the developer did provide commentary which gives insight into how each section of the level would have played out. It definitely gives you an idea of how they designed each one of these levels to ensure that they are executed properly. There are 3 lost levels in total, which the first being set in Jackson during the celebration before Dina and Ellie kissed. To highlight the town's growth into a community, different activities are presented, such as drinking, playing carnival-like games, and kids would play with Ellie in a clicker version of Marco Polo, likely a reference to the Uncharted series. Most importantly, we meet Kate, who was Ellie's first girlfriend in Jackson. Now, I'm not sure if Riley counts, it's personal, I think she does count, but it's up to the player given how short their relationship was. Either way, this is the person that Ellie told about her condition, the first person ever, outside from Joel figuring it out, and gave her the tattoo to cover up the bite. A lot of gamers missed out on the importance of this character in Ellie's life scene. She was tucked away in a journal entry during Tommy's flashback. Eventually, this led to Ellie heading into the dance where the core campaign's cutscene would play out, but not in the lost level. You have to play the main game for that. The second level showcases the sewer level from the core campaign to its fullest, a larger, more expansive section along with the first signs of Ellie's PTSD, while teaching the player about tight spaces and looking out for them by rewarding the player for looking for these particular areas. The final area is perhaps the best one. This one gives you a great insight of how far Ellie has fallen, showing how her rage is slowly consuming her, causing her to seek out others to cause pain to them. In this case, hunting a boar not for food, but just to break the poor creature, playing out like the deer sequence from the first game in a much more damaging way, as Ellie hunted that deer in that game for the food, but in this game she's just doing it for the hunt itself, even causing the poor creature to die in pain instead of putting it out of its misery. In a lot of ways, the content gives more insight into elements within The Last of Us 2 that we're missing. Most importantly, Ellie's slow downward trend to crave violence and the pain that is consuming her. It would have been nice if the development team went deeper to include things that were not playable, such as earlier concepts of the narrative, or other things that were finalized in the canon narrative that didn't make it in. There is short snippets of that, but there's only segregated to the developer's commentary, such as an alternate ending that I think a lot of players would have preferred. But after replaying this game for another time, I kind of see what they were going for. I won't spoil that for players who are still engaging with the game, but there is an alternate ending that they did debate on whether they should put in the game. Now let's talk about the biggest addition to the game, No Return. This is a roguelike mode where players take on multiple randomized combat situations and survival challenges. Players start with Ellie or Abby, eventually unlocking new characters. There are 10 in total. To unlock these characters, you need to complete challenges, which also unlock cosmetics such as skins. You can only complete one challenge at a time and in order. You are shown all the challenges, but you must do them in order with requirements unlocking like every skill in a starting tree for a character or healing a certain amount of damage using one health kit. Most challenges are unique to the character, but some are available across everyone within the playlist, such as healing or killing enemies. All the characters are taken from the main campaign and separated into Team Ellie and Team Abby. Each one has unique traits and weapons they start with, such as Ellie getting 50% more supplements for her skill tree, and Abby able to heal on melee kills. Some characters have limits, such as Joel and Tommy being unable to dodge, likely trying to complement the main game of why Joel didn't have that ability, but starting with a fully upgraded weapon. As for cosmetics, only Ellie and Abby have unique options. The rest of the characters just have options from the main campaign. You can only play one run at a time, but you can save within that run at safe zones between encounters. Starting a new run restarts the entire run, but thankfully all challenges completed are saved regardless, provided you complete the encounter. If you are killed, you lose all progress and must return to the beginning of the run. Each run contains 5 levels with 2 branching paths during each run. Players will face a random selection of 4 enemy pools that include the WLF, Seraphites, Rattlers, and Infected. The enemy pools never mix, with the exception being Chained Infected, but this is also random during fights and only appears when you're facing humans. Each run ends with a boss fight. The boss fight starts in order of difficulty, but once you beat them all, future runs will randomize the final boss fight. Added to the random encounters are mods, game modes, and gambits. The game modes include Assault, where you kill waves of enemies each separated by a timer, Hunted, where you survive a constant supply of enemies that are spawned in through a timer, but there's a limited amount that can spawn in the map at any given time, Capture, where you face the exact number of enemies guarding a safe that must be opened before the timer runs out. If you miss out on the timer, then the safe closes, but you still have to kill all the enemies. You can unlock the safe without killing all the enemies, but the second they're alerted, you have to kill all the enemies in order to unlock the safe. It'll permanently be locked. And Holdout, where you defend an ally AI from a finite number of enemies, and you can expect that this isn't the best situation because your allies aren't exactly great. They're great when it comes to the main campaign because they're invisible to the enemy forces, but here it's something that you want to avoid as much as possible, especially if you play on the harder difficulties. A neat detail is that the allies will interact with one another, but it's on a basic level, so don't expect any profound dialogue. It's just like, hey, thank you, what's up, stuff like that, just ordinary combat dialogue. Gambits are random challenges during encounters that provide bonuses if completed. This includes headshots, stealth kills, and so on. If you want even more bonuses, sometimes levels will include dead drops. These are mailboxes that require the player to dump random crafted items. If done, you will get a random item at the end of the encounter. Mods can change encounters by adding beneficial or detrimental changes, such as enemies having increased health, invisible enemies, stealth kills granting speed bonuses, and so on. Players are told that what encounter will be in every encounter before you engage with it. The exception is random encounters where everything is blanked out until you enter the stage. Each run provides the player with supplements, crafting material, currency, and sometimes a new skill tree that is displayed before each run when completed. You can upgrade your equipment and traits at any time, with some encounters including workbenches, but it's strongly encouraged that you do it in the safe room to save time and preventing you from being exposed to the enemy. Here you can spend your currency on randomized items, supplements, and crafting materials. Weapons sometimes are also available, either fully upgraded or you need to upgrade them with the workbench, and crafting recipes. Regardless of which character you start with, everyone can equip or use anything that you get within the game. It's simply a matter of taste and whether the RGN guards are supporting whatever run you're trying to complete. The levels themselves are not unique and taken straight from the main campaign and retooled for no return. The exception is the boss rooms, which are the same no matter what, so you won't have randomized locations when you face the final encounter. Now, you can choose 3 options of no return runs. This includes the standard run, custom runs where you can tinker with all the available options, and daily runs. Daily runs are the most intense since they're only available once per day and everyone plays the same randomly generated run. The biggest challenge is completing this run on grounded difficulty to obtain the hardest trophy, meaning you only have 1 attempt per day. The only reason offered to the player to do this outside of the trophy is leaderboards, which I can see a lot of players just simply not going through the headache of doing this. It is definitely a lot more intense because you have to really plot out everything that you're going to do for every encounter, but it is there for the challenge, and I can understand players just engaging with this because they want the challenge of completing this. Now, No Return is a fun mode for those who enjoyed the combat systems of The Last of Us 2, and it definitely harkens back to Naughty Dog's original criteria with the Crash Bandicoot series and Uncharted games. Yes, they kind of had some dark elements, especially in the Uncharted series, but most of those games were played for fun, and this mode is definitely just there for fun, for you to engage with the very in-depth and complicated combat system of The Last of Us 2, which has a lot of avenues of which you can exploit the enemy AI, and which they can also use the environment to their advantage. The allure of playing characters like Joel and Tommy is there, but it offers very little reason to continue playing even after you complete everything and get all the characters. Take, for example, the recent DLC for God of War Valhalla. It not only added the roguelike mode, which on its own was spectacular and fun to play, but story content that can encourage players to keep playing. No Return offers very little incentive to keep going once you get the character you want, and even then, likely you'll only play them a couple of times. Some sort of element, maybe documents that were cut out of the main game, something there that would give players a reason to keep playing, because while the combat system is richly crafted, the major pull of The Last of Us has been story and narrative focused content, and even offering a bit of that would have gone a long way for the player base. It does seem that this mode could have included co-op mode, considering there are plenty of ways you could team up with AI. I mean, Naughty Dog already has experience with multiplayer features, so it just seems logical to go that extra mile, especially after the cancellation of the multiplayer live service that was promised, but I get they did have to cut corners. For example, the animations for the characters are taken straight from Ellie and Abby, and they simply place the skin of those other avatars on top of them. That's why Jesse runs so weirdly. Regardless, I do think that putting co-op would have been a spectacular decision for this game, especially online co-op, where players take on a multitude or even double the amount of No Return missions and encounters that you can take on. I mean, granted, it probably would have been a little more confusing if players could pick anyone they want, like with Joel and Abby, which would have probably been like something that players would engage with. While I do love Naughty Dog for their single player titles, they're also notorious for their multiplayer experience, and it just feels like that section of Naughty Dog is becoming more forgotten over the years, despite the fact they have a lot of elements that could create great cooperative and multiplayer experiences. And if you don't believe me, The Last of Us multiplayer experience for the PlayStation 4 is still going strong even to this day. The Last of Us 2 Remastered provides a good set of updates for those who enjoyed the original game. The lost levels give more insight into what could have expanded Ellie's growth into a violent-natured person, and the No Return system is a fun feature that focuses on the game's intense combat system. But don't come into this game expecting that they're going to change or alter any of the core aspects that made The Last of Us 2 what it is. If you're expecting that, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do with the TV show and take the feedback and try and mold it differently, like they did for Season 1. But with this game, it's more or less the same game with some added bonuses for those who are looking for more Last of Us content. Either way, it's still a quality game, and it's something that Last of Us fans will probably get a lot out of. But for everyone else, the $10 fee just seems a lot considering what other options are available for the player base. Regardless, hope you liked the video. Like, sub, dislike if you didn't like the video, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
What do you do?
I saved her.